Hi, hello, and welcome to this episode of Geography Girl. Today we are diving into the world of royal higgery-pokery and exploring the life of John Dee, aka the Conjurer, aka Elizabeth I's most trusted advisor, astrologer and spy. He led a life of adventure and escapade, exploring the physical and spiritual world, trying to talk with angels, and was one of the main architects of the imperial vision for England. He actually was the first to use the term the British Empire and believed that this would be achieved through Britain's maritime supremacy, urging Elizabeth to form the British colonies in the New World. It's a wonder John Dee survived. In a time period where witchcraft he was exploring was punishable by death, he had a strong influence on the philosophy of the Tudor period, so let's dive in. So how did this man rise to such dizzying heights? As a young man, John Dee studied at Trinity College, Cambridge, where he gained a reputation for being a magician. He was a jack of many trades, an astrologer, astronomer, mathematician and alchemist, and he used his great intellect to play with physics and chemistry to create effects that wowed his peers. He always wowed his audience, especially in the Astrologers play, Peace, creating a giant mechanical beetle, which impressed the audience so much they believed that Dee must have conspired with the devil to create it. Dee spent his younger years travelling around Europe, lecturing on mathematics, and was the first to apply Euclidean geometry to navigation and built instruments of navigation. This work enabled him to rub shoulders with some of the most famous astronomers and makers of maps of the day, such as Gerardus Mercator and Abraham Ortelius. By the time he was done with his escapades, he came back to England, carrying with him a huge collection of mathematical and astronomical instruments. He was incredibly well read, with a huge library, one of the largest at the time. This poised him for eventually being responsible for reporting on the state of English political, economic and social climates, chronicled in the Summary of the Commonwealth of Britain in 1570. On his return to England, Dee had managed to ingratiate himself into the Tudor court, Edward IV being very interested in him. This was a time where witchcraft was a very, very dangerous territory, and it's not surprising that in 1555, Dee was arrested for lewd and vain practices of calculating and conjuring, for the horoscopes that he had cast for Queen Mary and Princess Elizabeth. A devout Catholic, those charges rose to treason against Mary, and he found himself in some very hot water. But Dee managed to wriggle himself out of that one, despite facing examination by the notorious heretic hunter, Bishop Bonner, who was a cruel man with much blood on his hands, but being a close friend of Dee, he saved him from further interrogation. Elizabeth was far more kindly towards him. He was known as her trusted philosopher. He was heavily influential, choosing her coronation date, the 15th of January 1559, and making forecasts about her reign based on this very date, which is something many astrologers still do today for King Charles. He was appointed the role in 1564 of appointed royal advisor in 1st's secrets, aka the court astrologer. He worked tirelessly, often sleeping only 2 to 4 hours per night. Elizabeth trusted him so much that he was an astrologer turned spy. Himself and Elizabeth would write each other in code, signing off with his letter 007, a number we might recognise today for James Bond. The 0 symbolised the eyes of the Queen. A mark like this on the envelope was a sign that the letter was intended exclusively for her. And the number 7 was chosen because, according to numerologists, it was lucky. He was respected but also feared. Many believe that he was that turned away the power of the Spanish Armada from England in 1588, sending murderous waves to the enemy fleet with secret spells and rituals. There was some truth in this. Dee knew much about navigation from his travels and the laws of nature. He did foresee the storm, and when the Spanish fleet approached the English shores, his advice was to postpone the battle. The English ships remained in a quiet bay where nothing threatened them, and the Spanish sea was pretty battered by blowing wind. When the storm subsided, the British were able to finish off the remainder of the belligerent and invincible armada. Employing mystics and purveyors of the occult to help with decision-making was not uncommon for monarchs. Queen Victoria herself held seances for years after the death of her beloved Prince Albert, in an attempt to contact him. Nostradamus, the 16th century mystic, took up residency in the French court for Queen Catherine de' Medici. He is otherwise known as the Prophet at Doom, and his 1555 book, Les Prophéties, was a collection of 950 predictions of future events. He's predicted the Great Fire of London, the French Revolution, and the rise of Hitler in Europe. As mentioned, it might seem strange for Dee's relationship to the supernatural to be so accepted, even encouraged at a time where witchcraft and heretics were punished by death. At this time, even mathematics brought with it suspicion. Dee was an explorer of the physical and intellectual sense and couldn't help but push it too far and try to communicate with angels through a medium, Edward Kelly. Kelly was an opportunist, a seedy guy with an alcohol problem, circumcised ears, and accused of fraud. And if you think I'm being too harsh, wait until the end. Who would dictate to Dee information from the unseen world. For 10 years, the two frolicked together, communicating with angels, believing that their spirits would bring with them prophecies and reveal to them the spirituality of the entire human race. Dee's Spirit Diaries and Book of Mysteries chronicled how the angels, making up of 24 elders, including archangels, govern the world. Dee's relationship with his scryer, Edward Kelly, went that bit further. Following a conversation with an angel, Kelly insisted that the angels implored him that they were to surrender each other's wives to one another. This wife-swapping pact, as dictated by a celestial being, was meant to be the deal for having received information. Much to the horror of his wife, Jane Fremond, who, for the record, hated Kelly, Dee agreed, and later the pact was fulfilled, with Dee sleeping with Kelly's wife. Whether a baby boy named Theodore, born 9 months after the incident, was actually the offspring of Kelly is unknown. According to history, Dee's participation in the sex pact was motivated not by lust for another man's wife or through a lack of care about his wife's dignity, but simply as an illustration of Dee's desperation and thirst for knowledge of the secrets of the universe. In the late 1580s, John Dee left for the Kingdom of Poland for some time. He left his house and extensive library under the supervision of his wife's brother, who was not a trusted house-sitter. His estate was plundered. Many manuscripts were stolen or destroyed. Once he returned to England, the plague broke out. His wife and 4 of his 8 children died in terrible agony. He himself only escaped by a miracle. But for the church, Dee was accused of having sent the Black Death to England. After the death of Queen Elizabeth in 1603, there was no one to protect him, and during his life he had made many, many enemies. King James I had no time for his mystic BS and was a strong persecutor of witches and black magicians. Dee spent the rest of his years in poverty, dying in 1608. And on that rather miserable note, this is where I will end today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you'd like to suggest a topic for me to cover, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. See you next Tuesday. Goodbye.